Support for this podcast comes from the patrons at patreon.com/FMLFPL.
Okay, welcome to another Fireside. This is Walsh. I am pleased, beyond pleased to be joined with the one and only Neil Atkinson from the Anfield Wrap. Neil, how you doing today?
Very well indeed. Happy to be here.
Yes,
like
thank
more
you
fires.
so much. More fires. Yes, more fires. So I think we could just kick off with the Liverpool stuff. Actually, before we start with the Liverpool stuff, FPL. What is your relationship with FPL?
The main one I now do a little bit more. I very much like, I'm actually in the midst of a draft for a categorized style fantasy football game. I'm doing it right now. It's happening in front of me to my right. So if I see it should be fine. My pick is all the way back round now. I've just done my last pick.
Okay.
So I like that and I play that and it actually helps me do my wider job. Like it's a reason to be on top of stats and numbers and how teams are playing and who's fit and all of that sort of stuff. So I find it actually genuinely sort of useful in a game format to end up with a reason to want to know precisely what Brighton are up to and all of that sort of stuff. In terms of the mainstream game, I've played it the last 2 or 3 years, and ultimately what does me in the end is the deadline. Mm-hmm. I'm someone who loses to the deadline. So what I'm conscious of on week 1, for instance, is we have a Friday deadline. So I'll need to, whatever it is I'm doing, I'll need to get me stuff together in time to be able to do that. And it's that which drives me a bit mad. And then the other thing that drives me a bit mad is when it all feels like it's really rather homogenous. Yeah. I.e., your picks are your picks. So you've got, like for instance, I've got a draft FPL team for this year, but you've just sort of got to pick Haaland. Like you've got to pick Haaland because you're not an art project. No one wants to be an art project. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to pick Haaland, and then at least to start with, and then you've got to you might try and have one clever one up top. Last year, Watkins, I got on the Watkins train quite early, so that was of use in there as well. I also dislike its characterization that practically everybody who plays association football is a midfielder.
Sure.
That's one of my gripes. Is Mo Salah is not a midfielder under any circumstances.
No. To class him with the likes of Caicedo or McAllister, it's like, come on.
Yeah. So I sort of feel like that's a bit, I don't like that aspect of it. But apart from that, I have actually grown to really enjoy it. Last couple of years, I've been in a couple of good leagues. One year, I thought it was about 50 of us in the league, and I think I finished 2nd or 3rd. And there was a period where I was trying to hunt the main guy. I sort of realised more through accident than design halfway through the season. I could win this. And then started to I hunted the lead person down across the remaining of the 38 weeks, but I just could never quite get there in the end in order to overturn it. The other thing that did me in about 4 years ago, where I lost my patience with it, was I put loads of work in, absolutely loads of work in on a wild card to whack out a bench boost.
Yeah.
You can't do both.
No, you can't.
The same week.
No, you can't.
And I didn't know that. So I put all this work in. I thought, fuck it, let's do this. Let's take it deadly seriously. Genuinely, I had like bits of paper, 3 hours on the whole thing.
Your like beautiful mind board. Just
like the meme of the guy from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I was like, and I was like, this has all come together, and I'm going to do this, and this is how it's going to work, and yada yada yada. It's going to be incredible. And then I did it, and then it went right, bang. And I went, oh no, you're not allowed to do that. So that was called learning the hard way.
Yes, that is. Yes, the hard way indeed. I just want to segue with that. I was really curious because you are across absolutely everything in the league, and like you're saying, your wider responsibilities at your job. You interview Wares at Brighton or whoever about Villa or anyone, right? How do you keep up? What's your routine? I hear you got your draft on the side, and I know you're in there with StatsBomb, but how do you your routine?
StatsBomb's really useful.
Yeah.
No, StatsBomb's really useful. What I try to do is I try to watch every team play for at least 45 minutes a month.
Okay.
So August, I'm mildly annoyed with the 12:30 kickoff on Saturday, not for any sort of Jurgen Kloppish reason, but more that nothing would please me more than the idea of effectively watching someone else be the 12:30, watching one of the 3 o'clocks, watching the 5:30. and then catching up on a couple of other little bits. And it would mean, and I'd probably watch 2 of the 3 o'clocks. Like I'd probably watch the first half of one and the first half of the other. And I try to sort of just see what everyone's doing at the start of the campaign, and then stay on top of it, really. So it's not done through some sort of, it's not done with unbelievable rigor. There's some years where I end up seeing one side a lot and another side not very much, more through luck than anything else. But on Saturday, I'll have to, I'll be watching our game, and then I'll have to do all the post-match stuff, and I'll be out and about to do that and writing about it. So that makes that a little bit difficult. I won't really get the option of the 3s, but then I will watch the 5:30. So then I've got that. And even if I'm not glued to it, even if I've got it on in the background in a pub, you can just garner enough from shape. I mean, there's 11 footballers and there's only so much they can do. You're playing a back 4, you're playing a back 3. What's the approach? Where's the intensity? And then stats bomb's really important, because I think if you've got that, if you've got a sense of what it is that teams are doing and the shape, and you can look on a stats bomb match report and see the pass network and go, yeah, that's similar to the last time I saw them. Sure. And then from there, you can see where they were pressing, when they weren't pressing. You can say, yeah, that's similar to the last time I saw that. You can understand a little bit there. So it's just staying on top of it. And then, but the priceless thing is actually getting to speak to people who support each of the clubs. Sure. So I'm really looking forward to this week. I've got 2 in the studio, I think, who don't support Liverpool, and then I'll probably do 4 callers, and I'll do a 5th one for Ipswich for some of our other stuff. So I'm talking to people who support 7 before you get to Liverpool, 7 different clubs here. So if you know the right questions to ask, you can find a fair bit out off the back of that and know what to watch for. Therefore, when you are watching them, and the guy James Roach, who's great, who talks to us about Bournemouth, me and him last season were practically forming a Lewis Cook Appreciation Society as the season was wearing on.
Yes, I was very into the mentioning of Lewis Cook, very, intentionally, because he's kind of unheralded, and, the work he did. And but you getting that with him is something special, right?
Exactly. So I'm watching Bournemouth. I think Cook's getting through a lot of work. And then it is as simple as, then I get James on the phone and I'm doing the recording. I say, Lewis Cook seems to be getting through a lot of work. And he's been brilliant. Yeah. And there you're sort of getting something that, and I don't sort of mean this disrespectfully, because it would happen from time to time, but you're sort of getting something there that you don't even get on something like Monday Night Football, where all of a sudden Lewis Cook's been brilliant. What's he been brilliant at? Well, he's been doing this, he's marching in the midfield, he's winning these battles there, he's shifted it forward, great partnership with Ryan Christie, and you're getting all of this. And I just think it's really interesting. And then, it just catches your eye, make a note of it, and then remember. And then the next time I speak to James, I'll ask him about X. What's X been up to? How's that been going? So no, it's a real privilege to get to do it. And it does make sort of the whole game a load of fun.
Sure. Yeah, that all tracks. I mean, I was also kind of curious because, look, I'm a gushing fanboy here and I can wear it proudly. But, when I listen to the breadth of knowledge and the way that you interpret and can articulate about the game, it's, to me, just, I look up to you, honestly. And I was curious. No, it's just how I feel. So I'm just being honest here. But we're friends. Only friends listen to this pod, so it's okay. When you watch a game on TV, because watching a game in the ground's a completely different thing. But and maybe we could park Liverpool to the side because you have too much. But the other 19 teams where you have just like broad general knowledge, some understanding. Maybe you're interested in the right back, maybe the left midfield, maybe the striker. But when you watch a game on TV, do you kind of go into it thinking, I really want to find out about this? Or is it more like it's too contextual and maybe the question's too broad? But, how do you watch games on TV? Like,
a bit of both. Yeah, okay. I think there's sometimes when there's a player or a thing that I want to see what they're doing. Like I am eager to see how Brighton are going to set up this year. So if I get the opportunity to see Brighton in the early going, that'd be great, and see what it is that they're doing, how it's going to work a little bit differently for them post De Zerbi. So that's like sort of a bigger picture thing. But then within that, it might well be that someone's mentioned to me, I'm trying to think of a good Brighton example. The idea of what they've got. There's going to be Viper and Baleba in the middle of the park. So how's that going to work? And what's the plan? What does Baleba look like as a player?
Yeah. How good is Viper? Right?
Yeah. How good is Viper? What actually is he?
Yeah.
Because it's difficult to judge that at this stage. Stuff like that. So you're looking for that as well. But then there's also just the idea of the game being on, and you're chatting away to people, and different people see or spot or think different things, and then there's just enjoying a game as well, which is lovely when that happens and fully, and you sort of get to be totally carried away by one. So there's lots of different ways to enjoy it, and I think I love it's in the book actually. I've got a book coming out, and in it I discuss I think there's a bit of a subculture of British support that tries to act as though television is the enemy, and I actually love being able to watch a huge number of games, and I actually would, and I would make the argument that the vast majority of football supporters, even in the UK, watch the majority of their football on television. And whenever we talk about television and talk negatively about games being televised because it might be inconvenient for a certain group of supporters to a degree, I always think that's a bit more up in the air than it's acted as though it is. But let's even just allow it. But the point is that it's that same group of supporters who the following week are watching Monday Night Football or who are watching the half five. And at that point, we forget, or they forget, that, you know, part of why it can occasionally be inconvenient is because, you know, if Liverpool are playing in the 12:30 and Man City are playing in the 5:30 or vice versa, I might be at one match and I'm watching the other one. Sure. And you can say, well, it's not convenient for me, the 12:30, and it might not be convenient for me at times, or it's not convenient for me, the 5:30. But if Liverpool are going for the title head-to-head with Man City, then both games matter, and I want to be able to watch them both. Sure. So I think that's your sort of, you know, I do think that I think that there's complexities, and I don't think football's relationship with television or television's relationship with football's always good enough. I think that more work can be done. But I do sort of think on the whole, I personally believe it's genuinely added to my appreciation and enjoyment of the game. Sure. And that allowing for the fact that I'm lucky enough to get to go and see Liverpool in the flesh a lot.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's the access is 10x, right? And I mean, I'm very far away from the British experience with Sky, and it's on this channel, it's blacked out here. The companies are the companies. I mean, it's more of a societal capital. I mean, I don't even know, that's a separate podcast, but You mentioned the book, your first book.
No, I've co-written two others and really co-written a third one, although it's under the Anfield Wraps imprint. But I co-wrote Maker's Dream, the story of Liverpool season 13-14 with John Gibbons, and a few other people guested as authors in that one. And I co-wrote a book called Red Letters with an American sports writer called Michael McCambridge, who wrote the excellent America's Game about NFL and the formation of NFL. And Michael and I, Red Letters was the 2019-20 season, and we corresponded over the course of a season. It was most of the 2/3 of the correspondence was published. The pandemic happened, and the final third was never published, but we did it for the book. In order to have that in there. It's, you know, I think I'm proud of both of those books, to be quite honest with you. But this is the first one that I've written just as me.
Yeah. Okay, so the book, Transformer, Klopp, The Revolution of a Club and Culture. I mean, you got to spend some time with the big man. I mean, what is there to say? I mean, how can you...
Well, I mean, I don't think I was that good the last time I got to spend some time with the big man, because I was very conscious that this was the last time. And I just sort of remember, like...
You're panicking?
Yeah, genuinely panicking.
Yeah,
and also
I would be shitting myself.
Yeah, but also because there's so much, like, I was there to interview him. We were there to interview him. There's three of us interviewing him. And the point is that people want to hear him speak. But there was just this thing in my head that was so much I just wanted to say to him. Yeah. Like, of thanks and of stories and things that there's so much that Jurgen's inspired that he just doesn't even know about. You know, and what doesn't help is that that's the stuff that he's interested in. So you're trying to interview someone who actually just wants to ask you questions because he's a very engaged human. Yeah. And he sort of knows he's going to have to talk about himself or his experiences. But there's this thing we gave him. So before the interview starts, we had a set period of time in the room with him, which was really gracious of everyone who sorted it out, especially Jurgen. Craig turns up with this scrapbook that he's made the night before, and it's a set of pictures of everyone who's contributed to the Anfield Wrap. He got them all to send pictures. And if they were digital... An actual scrapbook. And if they were digital... Like a proper scrapbook, like genuinely.
Okay.
And it's got all these pictures are being properly developed, and they're like pictures, they've got the texture of photographs. Okay. And he put them all in the scrapbook, and there was actually about 15, 20 too many, so we put them inside the back page. So we've got this set period of time in the room with Jurgen, and Craig very nicely says, Jurgen, we just wanted to give you this present. Thank you from all of us. And Jurgen proceeds to go through every page and look at every picture of this present in front of us there and then. And there's like, my brain's now sort of carved into three, where there's like 1/3 of my brain is going, this is all lovely, but we've only got so much time. Can we fucking hurry this along?
Got a job here.
That's the job part of me. There's a second part of me that's just crying like a baby as he's looking at all these pictures of my friends going through this thing. And there's this third part of me going, why are you the worst man alive? Why can't you just live in this moment? You know, why can't you just be at peace with this thing that's at this wonderful, unbelievable opportunity that's happening?
Yeah.
At the end. Yeah. Jurgen goes through it all, and it took Craig ages to pull it together and put it all together. And Jurgen says, "Thank you, I'll really treasure this." And Craig says, "The next fella's just getting a bunch of flowers."
Yeah, slot. Don't expect the scrapbook. It's just going to be
just because Craig had been working on it the night before, like it was a school project. He had to get it, and being able to get that time, honestly, it was an unbelievable privilege. And I talk about. I think I've interviewed him 6 times and met him twice. I think that's about right.
Okay.
And I talk about some of those occasions in the book as well. The book's quite it's quite a heady brew, really. It's got 19 key games from his tenure in there. So I write about each of them. But it's also it's got a timeline of lots of things that happened, not just in a footballing sense, whilst he was manager. Sort of a wider contextualization. Then it's him and, some of it's about, well, obviously the stuff about the games tends to be about the games themselves, but there's also some stuff in there about his tactics and his approach. There's also stuff in there about culturally the impact that he had. But also a massive part of it is, and I was really pleased when he said it, and as ever Jurgen being Jurgen, he gets to the heart of the matter when he left. He said that everyone's saying that, I changed you from doubters to believers, but you did that, not me. It's an active thing that you... Sure. I can't do, that is something that you have to do internally. And I think one of the things around Liverpool's, fan experience, fan culture, people individually, people dotted all over the globe, what was missed was we were just sort of waiting for Jurgen. Mm-hmm. Like it's not some sort of idea that Jurgen made everything. You know what I mean? A lot of the Anfield rap have been going for 4 years before Jurgen turns up. Boss Night have been doing stuff going back for God knows how long. Red Men have been doing stuff. Cop Outs had existed. Spirits of Shankly since 2008, and stuff just beyond that. All the wonderful supporters clubs that I'm lucky to get to go and see when I go. They were all there. They've grown and they've flourished when Klopp was around. But these people, everything already existed. And the infrastructure and the connections either existed or could be made to exist really, really quickly. Sure. And what Klopp transforms, and this is almost what the argument of the book is that he takes what was already there and he gives it the best reason to grow and to develop and to become something else and something more. And hopefully that comes over in the book, and that's sort of the argument that underpins the whole thing.
Yeah. And I mean, look, you're going to pose this to him and he's going to throw it right back because he has modesty and he's a, wonderful man. But he's the symbol, right? Almost the figurehead where, the infrastructure you're saying is there. And the rallying cry and the message and the buoyancy is him. And that is sort of, and to me anyway, as an outsider and a non-Liverpool supporter, I mean, my best friend here is a Liverpool supporter, so I'm pretty closely across Liverpool. And, from before Klopp era to him, and that's kind of what I was observing or noticing, maybe less of an observation, more of a subjective inference. I don't know, is that sort of somewhat...
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, but I think also it's still, the brilliant thing I think about Klopp in so many ways is the way in which he creates the weather but leaves the space.
Yes, sure.
And I think that's what he does all the way through this period, and even down to his now think about the nature of his departure, that it felt early, but
because you never want it to end.
Yeah, you never want it to end, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was perfect. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's that idea again of he creates the weather or leave the space, and now someone else has got to fill it, and he's created this new squad, and it's got all these constituent parts, but somebody else gets to play with it. Yeah, and that is that. It's very Klopp. All these aspects ultimately become very, very Klopp, and maybe he molds moments, or maybe moments mold him, and you can never quite understand where that line is. But he wants the best for everybody.
Yes, he does. He did. And, just from the squad standpoint, right? I mean, you guys took on a lot of new faces last year, the age, you look at it now and you have all of these puzzle pieces, as you're saying. And, Slot gets to he didn't dead end the team knowing he's going to leave and take on some old overpriced contracts that are going to break the books. He set this squad up to, like you're saying, be molded into a great many different things in Slot's vision, and we're excited. I'm excited. I'm sure you're very obviously excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I am. I think there's going to be work to be done. I don't think it's going to be easy, and I think that. But I think what's been interesting about Slot is that he's talked only really about winning and achieving. He's not really talked about transition. He's not talked about an extended development process. He's not, for me, he's not looked for any excuses for himself or for his players. That might change. Managers do and say on things when they're under pressure, but I don't think it will. I I feel as though that's the guy he is and the guy he wants to be. So I think if Liverpool can, I think that there is obviously, we're recording this in the aftermath of the Zubamendi transfer falling through.
Yep.
And I'd love that to have gone through for a variety of reasons. One would have been because it would have just ended the discussion about Liverpool in midfield. It would have given Liverpool five midfielders for the two deeper positions who were under 25.
Yeah.
And that, sorts it for a good couple of years. And I think that would have been no bad thing. And then we can all move forward together. And as it is instead, it's become another aspect of an endless Liverpool argument.
Sorry, a quick aside. Roberto with his gutter. I mean, does he perversely enjoy when things like this fall through so he can keep talking about it? Are you the yin and yang behind the scenes over there? Or is he with you too of like, oh my God, this is nauseating?
I mean, Rob's all things to all people. That's part of his endless skill. His
charm, sure.
Rob's constantly he's more than anyone I've ever really met. He's elbow deep in Liverpool, but always in Liverpool presence, never in Liverpool past. He always wants to know what the next thing's going to be. So that's why he suits the transfers. But even he said, and he said it to me today at the start of back in March, he said Liverpool might not need to do much business this summer. But I think that people can be sort of philosophical about that until it's put in front of them, and then it's hard to be philosophical. But also, I do just sort of disagree in that I don't think Liverpool needs to do tons and tons. But I think that if they're sharp about what they do, then I think that they can really set a squad up for an extended period of time to come, really quite neatly. I think I don't think it's a massive ask to future-proof much of the squad. I think the bit of the squad that's toughest to future-proof is the bit that goes around Virgil van Dijk.
Sure.
I think there's a thing that people are saying at the minute, which I think is just not really close to reality. I think it's very difficult for Liverpool to get in Virgil's successor, because I think the truth of Virgil's successor is whoever it is would need to be playing football right now. I think if there's ever an area where Liverpool just need to at some point just go and buy the best one, I think it's the idea that the moment where you realise that Virgil's not going to be the best one, your best one, you need to go and buy another best one.
Sure.
And just go from there. I think everything else is I would love to see a long-term plan. I think it's not difficult. If I say not difficult, I think it's costly, but I think it's not beyond the wit of man to create a long-term plan around Salah's succession. I don't think ensuring that you've continually got squad options. Well, and by squad options, what I mean is players you'd be happy to see come in and play a Champions League final. I don't mean number 19 on the rank.
Sure.
I feel as Liverpool are in a position to make that happen. It would cost, but I don't think it costs the earth, and I think that it can be bedded in the short term, and then in the medium term, it means that you can, even play hardball with Salah about an extension, for instance, if you've been smart and already got someone in who may well have the ability to succeed him.
Sure.
And I think that what I wouldn't want is for Liverpool to leave this window. If I say not having done that, the Zubamendi thing's a good example of, you can feel as though you're getting everything right, and then something can just go wrong in all walks of life, let alone football. But I would like them to have genuinely explored that and feel as though they've ploughed every furrow in that in this first window, and that might be difficult.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, let's get into a little bit more specificity of players. So, starting up top, we know the right wing's Mo spot. You really have four guys for two spots, and it's August 13th, new manager, speculation all over the place. And I know you've come on and talked about maybe players can play in that advanced midfield role, but looking at Lucho, Gakpo, Darwin, Jota, how do you kind of right now, with what little limited preseason information we have, and watching the system set up, I mean, where do you see those players fitting in? Who's first choice? Who's not? What do you see?
I think the first thing to sort of agree on this one is, to the purpose of your podcast, what I think is exceptionally difficult for people who are very committed to FPL this year is understanding how the Swiss system is going to work, the 8 Champions League group games are going to work, and how that's going to have ramifications when you're trying to pick and do transfers for a Premier League team, to build a Premier League fantasy team. I think it's going to be exceptionally hard, because you've just asked me there for what's Liverpool's first 11. I am of the view Liverpool's 11 for the first 2 league games up front will have Diaz and Jota in alongside Salah. But what then happens the other side of the September international break before you even talk about injuries, what's Liverpool's first Champions League group game? Is it home and away? Is it against a pot 1, pot 2, pot 3 or pot 4 team? If it's a home team against pot 4, then it may well be that he plays Gakpo and Nunez in that game and keeps the side that's worked for him in the league, if indeed it has up to that point. I think, and that isn't just for the Champions League teams either, that's the case for the Europa League too, that there's the Swiss system. And I think that means that you're in a position where 7 of the teams that people are trying to guess from an FPL point of view could at any, the very moment, for instance, where one would triple captain someone like Mo Salah is when, if Liverpool managed to have Liverpool's first 2 home games to the start of the September international break, one's Forest and one's Bournemouth. But there's a chance he doesn't play one of those 2.
Right.
We can't tell which yet.
Sure. And, that's something we come across all the time where, once the fixtures start coming every 3 days, it's, do you risk, the rotational pieces, or do you pick someone on West Ham? Bowen's playing every game. He's fit. He's playing every game. And, I'm hearing you say kind of, there are good options. There are too many unknown variables that, we have a good idea of the first 2 game weeks where it's going to be Diaz left, Jota through the middle. We talk on, or you look at it in September 14th after international break, that could be upside down.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that is now going to be more upside down.
More upside down.
Yeah,
upside down.
I think it's going to be even worse. I think it was. Okay. I think it's going to be. Yeah, because one of the things that for instance, normally is Manchester City tend to be first seeds. Last season, Arsenal got a really straightforward Champions League group first seeds, as was really straightforward.
Yep.
Now every team that's a pot 1 team plays 2 other pot 1 teams. Mm-hmm. What also Manchester City don't know, they can guess. I can guess. Me and Guardiola, it's one of the few areas in life where we can probably run a similar analysis. But how many points will it take to be guaranteed qualification for the next phase, and i.e. come top 8 out of 36? Sure. Well, there's 24 points available. I think if you're on 15, you can have a level of optimism. If you want certainty, you need to be on 18. 18, 6 wins, or 5 wins and 3 draws. Mm-hmm. That means there's no resting.
No.
There's no, even against your pot 4 team, you'd still, away, you're still probably, and it's worth pointing out, Real Madrid could get as a pot 4 team away at Aston Villa. So there's no resting in amongst this. There'll be a little bit and they can do some rotation, but you're constantly at it. And it goes all the way into January as well. It's not just, it's also the extra games. So to answer your question in a way that might be annoying to some of your listeners, is I think that first 11 for me is by the by. And I think if you're Liverpool, you need to make first 11 even more by the by, because what you can use if you're Liverpool that other sides don't have, I believe, is the ability to use genuine depth when other sides that you're competing with just don't have it to your level. So I would love to see Liverpool sign another couple of really good attacking players, and I mean really good attacking players. Yeah, because I think that go on.
I mean, the other thing that your squad at the asset is the strength and depth, right? I mean, your second choice for a lot of these positions are superb footballers. You're not putting in some 22-year-old who's, a novice to first team football. So, you do, but, there's a Zubimendi falling out, right? I heard you guys talking about, kind of the trickle down effect of, yes, it would end the debate, but it also would free up a lot of flexibility for less pressure on Gravenberch, where Maka can play. Soboslai, that Swiss Army knife, can move around. Harvey Elliott is like... So, I mean, it sounds like you are very keen on having at least 1 or 2 incomings who are real, genuine quality. And, football is what? A game every 3 days now. That's just what it is. And, it's mad. I don't like it. It's worse for us in the long term because the quality is worse. I know you guys have been across that on the Anfield Wrap a lot over the years. It is what it is. The oligarchs have to make money. You're in good shape, though, aren't you? I still think you guys are in great shape.
I think we're in good shape, but I think we can be in better shape. And I think that there's a couple of, I think the most important thing that you can do is to be as close to continually fit and fresh as possible to your point. I think we do have more strength in depth, but Manchester City have also got Rodri. And
they also have Calvin Phillips.
Well, yeah, but they have Rodri, and Rodri counts double. And in all these conversations, Rodri is he's arguably, I think, pound for pound the most important footballer on the planet, club
Fair.
and country. I think
That's
he's the
fair.
most important footballer on the planet. So,
Fair.
but we don't have that. So we've got to therefore find a way to say that that's important. Like Manchester City's record with and without Rodri is a live thing. It's just very rarely without
startling.
him.
Yeah, it's startling, but it's also startling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need to put ourselves in a position where, firstly, if they are without him, we can benefit. But also, secondly, I think that this is why you want to have real strength and depth. You want to have real options from the bench, and that might lead to you looking like, by the commonly accepted football virtues, you're a little bit overstocked. But I would love Liverpool to buy another couple of attacking players. Sure. And people go, oh my God, how many do you need? But my argument is Liverpool, the minute, are playing 4-2-1-3 as the shape. That's what it looks like under Slot. It's 2 holding, it's 1 who's very advanced. And then there's 3 attackers. Everyone's got to do their share of defensive work. Everyone drops in. It's 4-4-2 out of possession. So, there's work to be got through for everybody, but that's what it looks like at the minute from Liverpool's point of view. So I want Liverpool for the 1 and the 3 in what I've just described. I want Liverpool to have 8 great options. That's what I want. I think if Liverpool have got 8 great options, then it means there's tons of variation. You can pick at your opponent's weakness. You can accentuate one of your own strengths. You can go from there, and that's what I'd like to see Liverpool be able to do more than anything else, really. Especially if the feeling is Zubimendi was a bit of a unique option for them at the heart of that midfield. I don't know if I agree with that, but if that's what Liverpool are saying at face value, then Liverpool can knock around to mine, and I'll give them a good long list of attackers they could buy.
Sure. You and Rob both. I'm sure Rob's got it longer than his arm, a list of those players. Right? Yeah. But I wanted to touch on Harvey real quick. Were you surprised to see him drop into the B team and he put Szoboszlai there? I mean, what do you see for Harvey this year? Is it going to be just he's going to play a lot of minutes, but we don't know which games, or horses for courses, or? I
think he's going to play a lot of minutes. We don't know which games, and I think there's not going to be that many completed 90s.
Sure.
So I think if he's starting, he's coming off, and I think if he's not starting, he's coming on.
Sure.
So I think that's where he ends up. I think it's going to be difficult to sort of anticipate which of Liverpool's players are going to get on the pitch and stay on the pitch. Yeah. I think it's interesting looking at who's been used where so far. It's interesting you said A and B team, because I think that was the vibe of it, but I don't think
it wasn't really. It was tongue in cheek. But go ahead.
No, I think it sort of was a little bit. That was the vibe of it. I don't think that Jones and Elliott will be very happy about that though, because they both had a good pre-season. But they end up sort of being used into that second side in a way that, as I say, I think may have left them a little bit like, why is this happening to us? Because we can't have done that much better. I mean, there's one game there where Elliott gets 3 assists.
Yep.
He's clearly an excellent footballer. I hope he starts against Ipswich. I probably wouldn't be starting him against Brentford, and I think Man United's its own thing. Yeah. But I hope he starts against Ipswich. And I think he'll do well if he does, because I think Liverpool will need to get used to using him against certain sides over the course of the campaign, especially if they're not going to recruit another holding midfielder.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Curtis is another mad one. I know you guys love him. He always does my head in with his availability. I mean, it's like he plays 6 great games, then he's out for a month, and it's just been that way for years. And it must also cook the manager's head.
Very much so, yeah. I think it's exceptionally difficult to be around that bad luck with injuries. I think he also has bad luck with the sending off against Tottenham last season, where he doesn't just get the sending off. I think it was a sending off, but it was harsh. But then it ends up also being a 3-match ban.
Yeah.
And that again just sort of knocks him sideways, and then he comes back, and then there's a bit of an injury. I think he's great, and he was just beginning to really pair last season. So I think it is a difficult one for him to get through.
Yeah, for sure. Kwanzaa, I mean, he looks great. And we love Kwanzaa, watching him and seeing him develop. He's very young. Konate, another availability question, right? He's fit until he breaks. So, that usually is 3 or 4 games. Do you see that as, again, like Kwanzaa maybe he's going to pick and choose the ones where he wants the ball progression, and he's going to maybe drop Konate in for the more tough, defensively minded games against maybe how are you kind of seeing those two split up?
I think, I've got a level of confidence Kwanzaa probably gets the first 3. Mm-hmm. But then I suspect then it maybe goes as you've just described it, or it might just be whoever it is he feels is in form for a period. I think that you can throw Gomez into that conversation as well. I think it's going to be a little bit of a difficult one to anticipate what he does when. We'll get to see the pattern as it develops. I think Gomez passed the ball forward really well. I think Quanta passed the ball forward really well. I think Konate is better at it than sometimes his press, but also I think there's something with Konate as well, not just his press, but also his belief. And I feel as though Konate doesn't have a very good season last season, but I don't think the manager helps him that much. He never really, for a man who talks endlessly about rhythm, Klopp, he never. Yeah. It was like he actively denied Konate the opportunity of rhythm last season. It was like some sort of because to your point of when he breaks down and he gets injuries, and he does. It's sort of true. He does. But it was like last season, Liverpool. From the outside looking in, it was like Liverpool wrapping him in cotton wool, but I just couldn't work out what for.
Yeah,
it was
what?
It was like when it's like when your mum's got the best china, but she never ever gets it out.
Yeah, isn't that pretty in that cabinet? What
are we keeping the best china for here, Joe? At some point we get to eat off the best china, and all the way through last season, and then he would whack Konate out, and Konate would play, and he'd look a bit like, oh God, I haven't done this for a while, getting his big body into positions. So I feel as though Konate has a difficult 12 months, and it wouldn't surprise me that if he can get himself into a little bit of rhythm, he gets into a situation where he shows his excellence and he starts to play 3 games in 4. And then from there, at some point he'll break down and get an injury, get a knock. It'll be a bit tough for him. But I almost feel as though you're better off. I think there's different things to do with different type of injury-prone players. And I think some of them you need to, and this is just, I'm saying this with no sports science whatsoever, just from my years of watching football. I always feel as though there's somewhere, when they're fit, the smart thing to do is just to say 10 games, ride them into the sunset for 9 off the basis that they'll break at some point. And then there's somewhere you want to keep them topped up. And Konate, and I'd also argue Diogo Jota in a way, both strike me as just keep playing them and maybe just give them a rest. Every 6 games, give them a rest and then just keep playing them off the basis that at some point they'll go in for a tackle, something will happen, they'll get the injury. But if you try and guess when that is, you might only play them in 4 of your 6 games or 3 of your 6 games, and the same thing happens anyway. So I'm more like that. There's a couple where I am like I think Curtis is one where I manage the load, to use that parlance. But Jota and Konate, there's a thing in my head which is just wallop them everywhere. Wait, the toy will break. And then what you'll do is you'll take it to go and get repaired. And then when it gets repaired, play with the toy loads again. Yeah. That's sort of my attitude with them.
No, it's fair. And, the rhythm merchant talking about Jota has the ability, it seems like, to play 45, and it's like he didn't go anywhere, even though he's just been out for 2 months. So, I mean, does he need this slow buildup of time and minutes to get to his peak performance? In my view, Jota does not. Other players might, though, right? Where they need a little bit more of a slow burn to get back fit and trust their body again. And, Jota really only plays one way. And, Konate, too, he's a center back, right? I mean, the demands on the center back is very different, and the physicality. And yes, like you're saying, right? The individual context matters. And then sometimes you get Thiago Alcantara, who just has to retire, and that's just bad luck. But
very much so.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Neil.
No, that's you've got to pick and choose, and it's not always easy, but I think we've got to go from there. Yeah. And we'll work it out.
Yeah. I'm starting to actually get a bit startled by the left back position with Robertson breaking down. That's been one actually kind of surprised, and maybe I haven't caught the shows that you guys are sort of chilled out about, like Shimikas, and it's fine, because with right back, Trent looks like he's going to be there for part of the furniture, hopefully for the rest of his life. But you have Connor Bradley, and there's a drop off there because there's going to be a drop off from the best right back in the world to any other player. Shimikas, to me, the drop off from Robertson is very marked. Yeah, and it seems like you guys. What is the left back plan there? Is it one of those where it is so hard to buy at that level right now, or at the cost, or you guys think Robertson's going to kind of last a few more years? What are you seeing at left back?
I think the left back plan is that Robertson's going to be okay for at least another season, but that it will need to be addressed. And it wouldn't surprise me if they want to get a younger player in to get him ready for the succession of Robertson. It also wouldn't surprise me if they might want a different type of left back in the short term. Maybe that's how you do sort of begin the process of replacing Van Dijk, is you get someone who's a centre back, left back type. I just think that misses the dominance of Van Dijk in a couple of ways. But if I could see a pathway through to Liverpool getting in Levi Colwill, then all the best as far as I'm concerned. So you've got to bear that in mind. I'm of the view, I'm of the view that Robertson's last couple of injuries are interesting. I think they've been very impact-based. And I think that whilst that's the case and he's still got his pace, then I think Liverpool can take a little bit of a longer view. But that said, I think that there is a reckoning coming somewhere there. And I think that Liverpool, ultimately, will have earmarked Aït-Nouri from Wolves.
Yeah.
But I think Wolves
won't do
anything. Yeah, but I think Wolves now, having sold what they've sold this window, Kilman and Neto, I don't think they're going to do anything else. So I think that the Aït-Nouri, I think next year's got 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah.
So I think that Liverpool, I think it wouldn't surprise me if Liverpool have already got one eye on that and that Liverpool feel as though they can progress that player, but next summer, not this.
You have any Egyptians on the squad to kind of tap them up? Or?
Exactly that.
Okay, interesting. Aït-Nouri, yeah, I mean, he basically plays wing for them lately, but yeah, he's an exciting one. He would be a nice fit for sure. All right, I think we'll park the Liverpool stuff, and I know you're very generous with your time. Can I get one more in for you?
Yeah, go on.
Other 19 teams, you're doing your draft league. Any players that you're really keen on that are maybe not in the, common Look, we all know Anthony Gordon. We refer to him lovingly as piss hair, is great. Anyone else in the league that you're like, I like him this year, or I like this guy this year? Yeah,
I've got to have a really good eye on Fatawu at Leicester, because someone's going to have to make it happen for Leicester. So if he's reasonably priced, I think that he could be someone who's got something about him. I think Minter at Brighton is one to watch big time. I was having done all the work on Feyenoord with Slot. I was actually disappointed Liverpool weren't having a good long look at him over the course of the summer there. I have a sneaky feeling Mbueno is going to come on leaps and bounds over the course of the campaign. I think he's a cheaper sort of option.
He's still so young.
He is so much younger than everyone thinks because the beard and the receding hairline. Every time I speak to an Aston Villa supporter, they're telling me about how good Morgan Rogers is.
I'm still nervous about.
Yeah, I understand why people are nervous about it. But I feel as though there could be something live in that. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a couple of things I've got my eye on, which is the number of sides who've invested a bit of money or already have quite a big physical centre forward. So Wolves have gone for Strand Larson. And what I'm wondering is someone seen a little inefficiency here? Because everyone's determined to have the centre-halves be able to play football. Have we lost the sort of the bigger, more robust centre-half? And is there therefore a bit of a theory within the game that you could perhaps steal a little bit of a march if you've got someone up front who is able to be physically quite dominant? Because, a really good example is, I know Nottingham Forest fans, and I watched him last season and I think he's a really good player, but someone like Murillo is playing centre-back for Nottingham Forest. He's 5'11", and he's not terrible in the air, but he lacks.
He's not a monster.
He's not a monster, and I just sort of wonder whether or not there's a bit of a belief knocking round that there is some monstrousness that you can really get something out of. So I'm sort of bouncing around the idea that those players that I've just listed there, I think have all got a little bit of value about them. And then it's also not sleeping on the lads who've been a little bit injured across the last 12 months. So, I'm not saying you have him down as a starter, but what's happening with Solly March?
Good question. Where is Solly March? Is he alive still?
No, he's been playing games in pre-season. So, Solly March. What's happening with Joe Linton? You sort of forget Joe Linton at your peril. And if Anthony Gordon does move to Liverpool, Joe Linton will probably be back sort of filling in that left-hand side of berth for them in amongst all of that. You could forget about Matoma. I don't think people will, but you could forget about Matoma because
he's looked great.
Yeah, and he's looked great in pre-season, and he's got himself on the pitch a little bit as well. So I think that's the sort of, I think they're the areas to watch. I don't know who's going to do anything statistically odd. Like, for instance, I don't believe West Ham are going to be unbelievably solid, so you want their centre backs or anything like that. I think that's difficult to tell, but I think that in general, I'm of the view there's value at Newcastle.
Yeah, then 1 game a week's big for them.
Huge,
game, right?
Huge to find.
And, it's interesting you mentioned the Brun Larsen, right? They were across this a year ago, they just bought that Kaladzic, however, right? And we call him like baby giraffe, and he just broke immediately, but he's 7 feet tall. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's something that they're after, but yeah, I mean, all interesting names. I'm actually quite curious that you would mention a Leicester player with, Cooper there, and they look like they're going to struggle for goals. Like they might score 40 goals this year, and I'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds about right. But you're seeing that they might be able to have a little bit more about them with Cooper. If they're
going to score 40 goals, someone's going to score 10.
Fatu might score 10. Yeah,
and that's sort of. I think having your eye on that one, that sort of thing, I think is where there's a bit of value. I think things have to happen. So, when I'm doing this categorization draft, one of the things that I actually look to do is work out which teams are in favour of things happening in football matches. Because if you're counting things happening in football matches, then teams so for instance, Tottenham, you can't go that far wrong with having a couple of Tottenham players because there's constant activity. When Tottenham play football, they don't want the ball to go dead. Everyone wants to get involved. They take a lot of risks. So what that means is that Tottenham's matches are all action. What the flip side of that means, therefore, is that you wouldn't be looking at Tottenham centre backs, but you might be looking at Porro.
Definitely looking at Porro.
So
he's playing attack,
yeah, because he's all the way up there, but also because he's constantly involved. It's more likely that things happen when Tottenham play football, and I think that's part of what you're looking for. Sure. Things have to happen when teams play football. Ipswich are really interesting, but I just think it's going to take us a couple of weeks to work out what they're going to do in the Premier League because things constantly happen in Ipswich games. They scored the most goals in the Championship last season, but they conceded markedly more as well. Ipswich they're a team which has action within it, not dissimilar to where Luton ended up last season, where Adebayo was a footballer of genuine worth, pound for pound on something like Fantasy League, because you just couldn't keep him out the action until he got injured.
Yeah. Where are you at on BBD, Brereton Diaz at Southampton? We kind of have been a bit high on him, similar to that kind of idea of Southampton. It seems like they're going to attack, and they do have a kind opening run. And he was just banging him in for the shittest team in my lifetime last year at the Blades. Do you like him a bit?
I do like him, yeah. I like Southampton an awful lot. I thought they played some of the best football I saw in the whole country last season. The issue they're going to have, and maybe Brereton Diaz helps with it, but the issue they're going to have is both boxes. Sure. I think they're a really good side until you get to both boxes, at which point there's question marks. They're still playing Badnarak, who was part of the team that got them relegated.
He's awful. Yeah, he should be starting in the Premier League, right? Sure.
They're still playing Adam Armstrong, who was part of the team that got them relegated at the other end because he couldn't stick. And now he scores a lot of goals last season, and it might be that it's his time to shine. But I think Russell Martin can do a lot of good as a football manager. I just don't think he can keep it. He can keep it out the goal or kick it in the goal. Yeah. So that's my Southampton worry. It might be that Brereton Diaz makes a difference for them, but we'll have to see. I think Southampton and Ipswich are ones to watch.
And Leicester, same category, or
sort of, yeah. But I just think that Fatou's that exciting whenever you catch him. I think the difference is that you can just imagine how Fatou, we get to 15 games in, and Fatou scored 5 by virtue of the fact that he works himself a little bit of space, is direct, and sticks it in the back of the net.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, Neil, I think that's a pod.
Marvelous.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
So much.
And we'll do it again.
Love to.